Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Major Precious Metals. Just running through the forward-looking disclaimers. Just a few introductory remarks. Having acquired the Skagerrak project in eastern Greenland late last year, we've already accelerated the timeline to bring the project back into focus. We completed a very detailed mineral resource estimate, which was announced last month, which I'll share with you as we go through the presentation. And this independent MRE confirmed that Skagerrak is indeed one of the largest palladium and gold deposits waiting to be developed outside of the major PGM producing areas of Russia and South Africa. We're mobilized right now for an extensive drilling program and economic evaluation at a time when palladium prices in particular are at a high, and the precious metal suite that we have, including gold as a byproduct, also has very robust outlook price-wise. We're building an owners team and looking at to advance feasibility at Skagerrak over the next several months. The market capitalization table shows there we're listed on the CSE as well as in Frankfurt and on the OTC. So the Skagerrak is a unique opportunity. I think you can see from the sheer size of the indicated and inferred resources there that Skagerrak certainly is a deposit of really global significance in this space. The resource indeed was actually calculated on a palladium equivalent basis at only 1725 ounces of palladium, $1725 per ounce of palladium, and at 1800 gold. Today, the palladium price which has been driven up by events over the last few months, is close to 2,700 an ounce. But again, in doing this economic evaluation, we were very conservative in looking at the palladium prices, and still we have an incredibly large resource base to work with. Events in Norilsk and in South Africa over the last few months have driven palladium prices up to peaks of over $3,000 an ounce at one point a few months ago. But even before then, the underlying demand for palladium was very, very buoyant, and a very significant supply-demand deficit is looming this year and looks set fair for the next several years. And we'll talk a little bit about what's driving palladium demand as we go through the presentation. In effect, this asset has been dormant for a decade, and it's located in what we think is a very, very good geopolitical location. There's been quite a lot of misconception about mining in Greenland recently, but the government has come out with some very strong public statements in the last little while, really confirming that it is supportive of sustainable mining in Greenland. There was some controversy over a rare earth project to the south, shown on the map there, that contains uranium. So there's certainly not going to be any uranium mining in Greenland in the near future. But in terms of mining itself, the government is very mining friendly, low investment risk, and a pro-mining population as well. Number of historical and current operating mines. 2 mines recently permitted, one for an orthosite and another in colored stones, and a number of development projects that you can see there going through the process. A very clear and established mining act that sets out very clearly the steps that have to be taken. One of the things that I think we have to look at here is that there was some publicity recently about certain high-profile Americans making statements about the strategic importance of Greenland, not only for minerals but for other things too. And it has a large abundance of critical metals, not only palladium and platinum, which we have on our deposit, but also what we've termed critical minerals, things like titanium and vanadium, and all these can be put into the box of green energy metals. And the upshot is that it's starting to attract attention from not only European agencies, such as the European Raw Materials Alliance, but the Exim Bank, for example, Export-Import Bank of the United States, which has recently signed LOIs with 2 of the development projects in Greenland for fairly substantial debt packages. And really getting debt into a mining project, wherever you are in the world, is very critical. Once you get through the exploration stage and go into the PEA, the preliminary economic analysis stage, and then into detailed feasibility, it's debt that comes first. And if the debt lenders are satisfied with the project, the equity to build these projects comes second. So the fact that these export agencies are coming in with very chunky debt packages right now bodes very well for development in the future. Of course, everywhere in the world has to take cognizance of ESG, and particularly, I think, in Greenland, where global warming has deeply impacted there. The whole climate change activity that's gone on worldwide has affected Greenland and really has opened up not only polar routes, but also the mineral areas of Greenland. And really, Greenland can be tagged as one of the last very large unexplored areas of the world. But of course, environmental, social, governance, all has to be done properly. We're very conscious of this. We're as well as what we say on the slide there, we're very conscious of minimizing the impact on ecosystems and biodiversity, which is very important in a pristine area like Greenland. And we're working very, very closely as we start our detailed exploration program this summer with our independent consultants, a group called SLR, who have very, very deep expertise in ESG. So I think we can be assured, and in our discussions with the government, we've been at pains to point out that we certainly are very conscious of ESG efforts and will embed them at every point of the cycle as we go forward. We do have three very large licenses. The main license covering the Skagerrak intrusion, which I'll talk about in a moment, is 100 square kilometers. It's huge. A smaller license to the right of it on that slide hosts the camp, the historical camp, and the airstrip, which we'll use this summer to fly in and out samples. But the bulk of the exploration is going to be done from a ship anchored in the fjord, and I'll talk about that in a moment. The interesting thing here is that we own 100% of this large license. There are no encumbrances. There's only a 2.5% government royalty, which kicks in on production revenue. And the government, again, reiterating its stance over the last coming months, has said it is very, very keen to develop a sustainable mining operation. For the geologists among you, Skagerrak has been very well known for many decades. It's a unique, what we call a layered mafic igneous complex that contains stratiform platinum group metals with gold and also iron and titanium oxides. Very similar in geology in many ways to the Bushveld complex in South Africa, although it's much younger than the Bushveld complex in geological age, for those of you that are interested. Mineralization was discovered there in the late 80s and early 90s, and several groups have developed exploration since then. We've inherited all that, and I'll talk about in a moment the remodeling and the reanalysis of that historical work that we've done, which has led us to demonstrate the global significance of this deposit. Global warming has affected this area. The glacier that covers a small part of the intrusion has retreated markedly over the last decade or so, exposing, as you can see, a lot more rock to be mapped and to be sampled. The resource estimate is just being completed. It's independently verified by SLR, and a 120-page 43-101 report was filed a few days ago. And this is an extract from that report, which was published on the company's website a month ago. When you look at rock, so I've been in this business for 40 years, and you can look at equivalent grades and this, but it's a very simple science, really. You look at the rock value. You look at the contained minerals in the rock and the cost of getting those contained minerals out. And we can see already, just in the indicated nature, again, done to 43-101 standards, that we already have over 4 million contained ounces of palladium and over 1 million ounces of contained gold. But the real excitement here comes when you look at the inferred. Almost 9.5 or just over 9.5 million ounces of contained palladium and just shy of 4 million ounces of contained gold. This is already a very, very clear illustration of the potential global significance of this ore body. And in the notes, I won't dwell on the detail here, but I'm happy to answer any questions as we go forward. You'll see the basis on which it was done on metal prices, say US dollars 1725 per ounce for palladium, 1800 for gold. And interestingly, the mineralized package, which is about 45 meters in total thickness, contains these 1 to 2 meter bands of precious metals. But what we call in the business the gang material, the waste in between those zones, is also mineralized with iron and titanium and vanadium, which has never been really evaluated for a saleable product yet, although the indications from early metallurgy on the project show that this VTM concentrate of these critical metals can be added to the mix. So independently analyzed, very significant resource, and as you'll see when we talk about the program we've planned for this summer, the potential to get it even bigger and to move these categories towards the measured resource category and then into reserves as we next year go into feasibility. Just some cartoon illustrations of the geology, very extensive, 70 square kilometers of an intrusion, over 7 kilometers by 11 on a north-south basis, 7 kilometers east-west, dipping relatively gently, drilled just to over 1 kilometer up to now, but the estimated depth of stent is over 4 kilometers. And it's not unusual, I'll illustrate it again later, for these large layered intrusions to contain multiple deposits. There are over 30 mines developed today on the Bushveld complex over the 50 or 60 years since its discovery in the 1920s. Again, relatively stratiform, relatively horizontal, going on the north-south basis. As I said, a 45-meter mineralized package with these 3 zones of precious metal, of largely palladium and gold, but intervening zones of iron, titanium, and vanadium, which will be discovered, which will be explored in much more detail through the summer program. Mineralization, quite frankly, the potential is tremendous. It remains open in almost all directions along strike and at depth. To the north, the deposit outcrops. It's seen less development drilling. It is primed for us this year as a priority target with open pit potential. We'll be focusing quite a bit of initial drilling on that area. Although to date, we think that the open pit potential will probably be just for starter pits, although there is significant open pit potential, and the resource has been totally calculated to date, predicated on underground mining. Just some pictures to show the airstrip. We accessed it during the due diligence and the qualified person trip with SLR by flying a twin otter plane 2.5 hours from an airport in Western Iceland, and this summer program will be accessed from a ship in the field next to the deposit. It is a remote. I'll just go back one slide. It is a remote area. It is rugged terrain, but it's no more remote or rugged than many of the mines already developed in northern Canada, in the Russian Far East, on a fly-in, fly-out, or a rotating shift basis. It has certain challenges, but in terms of this type of cold weather project, it's relatively accessible. We intend to accelerate the timeline. This is, as I say, the deposit's been known about for a long time, but it's been dormant as a development project for a decade. And a decade ago, the platinum, the PGM space, the prices were very different to what the price structure and the price forecasts are in 2021. The strong development potential is really predicated on the fact that we're coming off a base of very significant historical exploration, and with a deposit that's open in all directions, with a new large exploration license added to the land package. Our target is to complete this drilling during the course of the summer, starting in mid-July through to October, then move quickly based on those results and the verification and the further work on metallurgy and mining studies that will be done, move into a revised mineral resource estimate during Q4 of this year, and then into a PEA, a preliminary economic evaluation during Q1 next year. It's all about the market, really. I mean, the reason someone asked me a question earlier in the week, why now? Why Why is suddenly Skagerrak a potential development project? Well, it all starts and ends in the market. It's got a precious combination of palladium and gold. And no matter what your views are, I think the outlook for precious metals generally is very robust. We believe that the general investor interest, which has roared back into gold over the last 18 months or so, will spill over in the next several months and years into platinum group metals. And as I say, palladium prices today, maybe in the short term, driven by events in Russia and problems in South Africa, peaked at just over $3,000 an ounce a few months ago, and have settled in the high 2.7, 2.8 range right now. And gold seems to be pretty steady right now, just above 1,800. Who knows where it's going to go? All you know is there's a lot of the commentators that come to these conferences, so I'm sure you've heard during the last couple of days that there's great hope and great optimism for all precious metal prices over the next decade. Those of you probably don't know too much about palladium. The demand is very, very strong right now, and it's still being driven by the increasing metal requirements in catalytic converters as emission standards tighten worldwide. And that's not going to change for the next decade. Hybrids require even more autocatalytic emission controls. And it's a narrative right now, but there is increasing use of platinum group metals and palladium in particular in the burgeoning hydrogen economy. I'm sure you've heard the buzzwords PEMs, proton exchange membranes, which is a type of fuel cell being developed mainly for long-range transport applications and for stationary and portable fuel cell applications for things like renewable energy feed, which is only going to increase over the next couple of decades. So yes, there will be some penetration, and you can pick your own numbers how quickly EVs will become the car of choice, but there will be underpinning demand for palladium in particular from the energy sector. And I think it's very fair to call palladium right at the forefront of the green energy metal run. I haven't talked in too much detail about our program, but I will now. The program is designed to confirm and upgrade the existing resource, which is significant as we've seen, but also to look at expanding the resource along strike and at depth within the main license area, look very closely at open pit startup to the north, and take a first look from a reconnaissance point of view at the similar geology in the very large exploration license that we've factored to the north. But the bulk of the money being spent, 15,000 meters of drilling, will be spent on the intrusion itself. Mobilization is already underway. Those of you that follow the company can look and see on the company's website a series of press announcements in the last several weeks. Just announced contracts for diamond drilling with a Canadian company with extensive experience working in Greenland. We have 4 diamond drill rigs on their way on a barge. That'll be ready to anchor off the coast, off the deposit in a couple of weeks' time, go through protocol and start drilling. Target date is 15th of July this season. Contracts with Air Greenland for helicopter support and with a Greenland company called Exploration Services for field admin and for logistics support have already been signed. So mobilization is well underway. The converted icebreaker ship, which we've now renamed Blue Sea Star, has been secured by the company. It can provide accommodation for the field crews, and it'll be anchoring in the fjord adjacent to the project in a couple of weeks' time, towards the end of June. Again, going through the COVID protocols for the startup of the exploration program in mid-July. The program will obviously look at very detailed metallurgical test work to determine all the good things you see on the slide there, the optimal processing route in essence. Preliminary metallurgical test work done on historical samples does confirm that a standard, what we call a PGE gold concentrate, which is very palladium rich and very gold rich, can be produced using standard, what we call xanthate reagents. But also the preliminary work does show that a separate vanadium, titanium, and magnetite concentrate can be produced, again, straightforwardly as much as anything is straightforward in metallurgy, from further flotation of the tailings and straightforward magnetic separation. And we'll be looking at that very, very closely as we go forward. Some very interesting other developments taking place in the world of metallurgy. There's a process being trialed in South Africa right now on a modular commercial scale at a mine owned by a well-known company called Pallinghurst. They own the Sedibelo mine in South Africa, and they're testing a clean technology alternative to smelting, where it's a hydrometallurgical process which produces metal from PGE, from platinum group mixed concentrate, and produces metal on site. Now, that will have very significant implications for the whole of the platinum industry. It's being promoted as a clean technology alternative, a green benefaction with much lower electricity consumption, greenhouse gas, etc., etc. Now, we're not saying at any stage right now that this is applicable to Skagerrak, but the advances on things like hydrometallurgical programs, the advances on things like that we'll be looking at in the ESG program of looking at power for remote communities, using battery storage, using solar and wind power. And this is not just pie in the sky. This has already been developed and implemented in a lot of communities in northern Canada. And we believe it's very, very applicable to Skagerrak. And again, we'll be looking at all these economic evaluation criteria as we go forward into the PEA, and preparing the preliminary economic assessment, where we'll start to look at details of engineering design, mining methods, etc. The whole climate of looking at the economic evaluation and the economic development of the project, and this is where looking at the 45-meter, very well established mineral package that we see. There must have been dozens of scientific papers written about Skagerrak over the decades, which really underpin the structural geology and the mineralization. We have a lot of historical work on that project, but we now need to look at what can be done with today's technology. Can we increase the mining widths? Do we just selectively mine the precious metal horizons, as is often done in South Africa? And even there have been major advances in continuous mining techniques, remote electrification of mining equipment, etc. Or can we, by incorporating the pervasive mineralization of iron and titanium and vanadium, can we look at a combination maybe of selective mining, bulk mining techniques, and maybe even open pit mining as well? So all this will be put together during the summer. It's an aggressive 15,000-meter program. It'll start in mid-July. It'll conclude on site in October, moving then into a stage of mineral resource estimation, leading to the next PEA. I'm putting together an owner's team. My background is I'm a mining geologist, an investment banker. I worked in the industry for 40 years. I've been involved in all aspects of the industry, from technical through capital markets, etc. And when the shareholders invited me to join the company, it was to help put together an owner's team. We've started to do that. We've just brought on board Gustavo there. You see a very experienced VP exploration who knows the project very well. And working with SLR, we've designed what we think is a very excellent 65-hole drilling program, drilling up to depths of 900 meters with 4 diamond drill rigs for this summer. Again, working with ESG embedded into the program, working with the SLR as the independent consultants, looking at all the QA, QC, and qualified people verification that we have to do for any project anywhere in the world. And we'll continue to strengthen the management team as we go forward. Well, I think the highlights speak for themselves. As to value, everyone has a view on value. I went through quite quickly the slide at the beginning. We have about just over 200 million shares in issue right now. We have a market capitalization of just over 90 million at today's, in Canadian dollar terms, at today's prices. We own 100% of this large palladium resource with significant gold credits, and we have the potential for additional critical metals as a saleable product. We have a large exploration package to explore, including not just new exploration going further north on the new license area, but increasing along strike and at depth within the layered intrusion. As I said, you can look at these layered intrusions in South Africa and in Russia. It is not unusual for multiple deposits to be discovered within these units. And again, we're not starting from scratch here. This is not greenfield exploration. We're coming off the back of very significant historical exploration, which gives us already this large resource of indicated and inferred palladium and gold, which again, you can look at value, you can compare us to other junior companies out there, but I think the difference here is that we have a large resource and it's going to get larger. We're located in a safe, mining-friendly jurisdiction. In my opinion, it's got growing geopolitical importance for its critical minerals. At this stage, it seems it might be developed by a combination of open pit with selective and bulk underground mining methods. And the PEA, the preliminary economic analysis, planned for the Q1 of 2022, will look at all these aspects. We'll evaluate all these options. The Bushveld was discovered in 1924 by a gentleman called Hans Morensky. I'm sure he would be amazed to know that today that over 30 mines have been developed on the Bushveld complex. It all starts and ends in the market. We're in the fortunate position, perhaps, right now with Skaregard, that platinum group metals are entering what some very respected commentators have dubbed a PGM supercycle. We think the value of Skaregard will be appropriately re-rated upwards as we progress along the mine development cycle. That's our program. That's what we're going to do over the next several months. Thank you very much, and I'm very happy to take questions as and when. Thank you.
Tony, thank you very much. A really well-rounded presentation and look inside the company and a look ahead at what's to come. I really enjoyed the analogy that the terrain in Greenland is not dissimilar from some of the spots in northern Canada in terms of the rugged nature and fly in, fly out. That was really helpful to hear your thoughts on that. So, of course, we have been quite active in the question and answer column. So I'll just start firing away and we'll take these one by one. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Question on the finance side, Tony. What type of financing options do you anticipate will be required to develop the Skaregard project?
Okay, well, right now we have an aggressive program of 15,000 meters of drilling. So let's take it step by step here. The program this year, we'll spend about $15 million into the ground. We've already spent, since we started mobilization, well, really, going back, let me just talk, starting mobilization in April and May, we've spent about $3 million. We've got another couple of million to spend to get the program up and running. We have that. We have our arms around that. Obviously, we will be looking at our financing needs as we go forward. And, you know, I won't say too much more about that in the public domain yet, but, you know, we have a lot of interest in the deposit. In terms of what's it going to take to develop Skaregard? Well, a good question. This is why we're doing a PEA. You know, I have to couch everything that I say that the PEA will give us this economic evaluation. But if you want to look at analogies, the Lac des Îles mine in Thunder Bay, their base for developing there, and they were bought for about $1 billion by Impala back in, I think it was the end of 2019 when palladium prices were lower. They have the same indicated resource base as us. They produce from a cost basis, the last published, at $500 of palladium per ounce. So if we can have that sort of margin, we're looking at I think you're looking at a plus or minus, you're looking at what I call a stage gate development, where I think it will be developed incrementally, but overall you'd be looking today at a 400-500 million capex to get going. But on a fuller scale. It can be started on a smaller scale and expanded.
Okay, thank you for that perspective. Next question revolves, how has the recent mineral resource estimate changed your plans for the Skaregard project?
Well, I think we were very, very encouraged. We hired SLR, and using advances in geological techniques and geological modeling, many of your listeners will be very familiar with the Leapfrog software that we used. and with looking at new photostat and drone material, and with the glacier having retreated, we were able to simplify the geological model. Okay. So we remodeled everything. We resampled. I probably glossed over it too quickly, but all the historical work was resampled, and the indicated and inferred resources you see is based on fresh sampling, which was verifying, but it was on core that was produced a decade ago. So what we've done here, it's made us be more aggressive. But the sheer size, we think that our 15,000 meters will not only underpin the historical sampling and give us information for the PEA, but we're pretty confident that given the consistent nature of the mineralization throughout the 45-meter mineralized package, that we will see an expansion of the resource. So long-winded answer to say, I think the size of the resource made us more determined to drill aggressively this summer program.
Understood. And due diligence, always the best way to go. Thank you, Tony. Can I ask, just given all the social and environmental restrictions that exist in Greenland, what attracted you to that jurisdiction?
Well, I've worked all over the world. I've just been involved in projects in Kazakhstan and in the Russian Far East and throughout Africa a few years ago. But I was attracted by the fact that Greenland has a very modern, very straightforward mining act. Okay. It was put together in 2009, 2010. It gives very clear step-by-step process of how to go about getting an exploration license and moving on into an exploitation license. I was very attracted by this level playing field. It spells out very clearly the ESG aspects that have to be done with all the initials of IBA, impact balance statements, social impact statements, EIS, which we have to do anywhere in the world. Right. So I was attracted by that. And in working with SLR, we're going to be incorporating the towards sustainable mining criteria of the Canadian Mining Association, which is now being globally accepted as probably the benchmark for ESG work. So I was attracted by the fact that the government clearly spelled out what needs to be done to go through the mine development cycle. And that's not always the case elsewhere in the world.
Understood. Thank you for that. Kevin asks, where will you access skilled labor based on the jurisdiction?
Greenland has a population of 56,000. The nearest habitation going north and going south are around 350 kilometers away. Okay. Obviously, we will be based on a fly-in, fly-out basis. Again, I didn't go into much detail, but the ship that we have on dock this summer contains accommodation for over 100 people. Oh. We'll rotate in and out. We'll have our crews between 50 and 60 this year. So we will, of course. I think mining in Greenland is taking off. It's been bubbling for a decade, but you can see going back to the map, there are 2 mines have been permitted in the last several months. The Colored Stone mine and the anorthosite mine. There are projects, the Dundas project, the Citron zinc project, well into the pipeline of mine development. So there will be some workforce, but again, a lot of this will be done on a fly-in, fly-out basis, but using as much local labor and interacting with the local communities, although, without being flippant about it, they're not that local.
Understood.
But it is a pristine area. It is an area that's used for hunting. So we're certainly going to embed this ESG aspect into our program from day one.
Okay, thank you for that, Tony. And I'm grateful to see that our keynote speaker from this morning, Byron King, is with us in this session. And Byron asks, just in terms of the proposed power source, we're in the same territory here. What is the proposed power source for any major operations there?
Well, for a major operation, I'm intrigued by the work that's been done in Northern Canada. This is actually has been pioneered by SLR have been involved in some of this, but it's actually been pioneered by Stantec. And I'm absolutely convinced, having looked at how do you provide power to remote operations in the Russian Far East and in Kazakhstan, that we can set up at least a partially solar wind-powered setup with battery storage will be very important here, and with electrification with a microgrid. And this is not Fantasy Island here. If Byron wants to, I'm sure is familiar with this. This is has been done in remote communities in Northern Canada. And I think this will be very applicable to Skagerrak, particularly as we envisage this as what we call a stage gate development, an incremental development program going forward, building the infrastructure, particularly if we can demonstrate some starter open pits in the northern end of the project. I'm convinced that that's the way that the power will go, that we will be as close to a zero carbon operation as can be in this day and age.
Yes.
And that is our goal. And again, I say, this is not something that we just plucked out of the air for the purposes of this presentation. We're very into a lot of research on this, looking at what's actually been done in Northern Canada.
Understood. Thanks, Tony, for that. Just in terms of the output for the company, what about drilling costs in the area?
Well, drilling costs are high. Again, what do you call a drilling cost? To be honest, I've got to factor in when I'm doing my budgets with our project manager, Jim Sparling, who's had 6 years experience in Greenland and is very well known to all the authorities there and has done a fantastic job in these COVID-benighted days of getting the logistics together. But, we have to factor in helicopter support. We have to factor in an exploration crew coming off a ship, etc. We have to factor in 4-diamond drill rigs, etc. So drilling costs are high. But we factor that into our budget this year. But it hasn't stopped us from still doing an aggressive, or designing an aggressive program. But drilling costs are high because of all the logistical support that you have to give for drilling.
Fair enough. Let me just ask to go back to the Skaregard deposit itself. How would you mine the Skaregard deposit, and what is the status of the PEA at this moment?
The PEA is waiting for updated information. Okay. Although we've got a lot of good information from the resampling of the historical data, we need to do more. We need more fresh samples for metallurgy, for mining studies, etc. Although on the preliminary studies, I think it's quite clear that if you want to talk about mining methods, we're pretty convinced we can have open pit starters. So we have a combination of open pit and then going underground. Definitely in selective mining, that's a real obvious way to go, just mining the precious metal horizons. But I'm very convinced that when we get this fresh data from the mineralized package, we'll be able to look at bigger mining widths. And also, I should just say, in the mineralized package, the historical sampling only looked at platinum and palladium and gold. Okay. Someone asked me yesterday, is there any rhodium there? I said, well, I hope so, but it has not been analyzed for minor precious metals. It of course will be. And all this economic data will go into a PEA. So I'm not going to promise that, we'll come out with a PEA anytime in the next few days. Mm-hmm. The PEA is scheduled for the first quarter of next year, but it will be a very detailed PEA, if that's not a dichotomy of terms. I've seen many so-called bankable feasibility studies that you can drive a coach and horses through. This will be very detailed, and it will give us a really good handle on the economics of the project. And then it'll tell us what we have to do to move forward rapidly through pre-feas and into feasibility. Sorry, that's not so definite an answer, but that's the answer I'm giving right now.
Well, it feels like some clarity there in terms of first quarter, as you say. It's something to look forward to if all goes well. Appreciate that. Question comes in saying, would this be a mill operation, Tony, or would the ore be shipped off-site for processing, given where it is?
No. This would be processed on site. Whether you have whether you locate underground crushing stations, there will be conveyor runs underground because of the distances involved. I think we'll have multiple deposits within this. There could be a combination of. I mean, already in our outline plan for drilling, we can see 4 separate areas that are mineable, subject to confirmation that I've been through. I'm ad infinitum saying with the QP stuff which we're doing this year. But yes, and the exciting development here is that not only will it be milled on site, it might actually be able to be processed to metal on site. Now that's not me plucking stuff out of the air and with my geologic hyperbole, which I'm well known for. It's looking at the Pallinghurst people gave a very erudite paper at the SFA Oxford conference a few weeks ago, and they're actually trialing this in South Africa at the Sedibelo mine, not on a lab scale. This is on a modular commercial scale basis. So we'll get a lot of commercial data out of that in the next 12 months, and that will be fed into the PA. So the exciting thing here is not only do we have a large deposit, not only can it really help the economy in Greenland, we might actually be able to actually produce metal on site.
Well, I hear your passion for that, Tony. Thank you very much. Is it fair to ask for any sort of clarity here in terms of when you plan to start the Skaregard drilling program?
No, clarity is right there. Everything's underway. The ship's been refitted with the helipad. We're picking up the crew very shortly in Iceland. There are various COVID protocols that we have to go through. The ship is slated to anchor in the fjord in the last few days of June. Again, we'll go through another COVID protocol quarantine, and 15th of July is the target date for the start of drilling.
That's what I call clarity. Thank you very much for that, Tony. As we close out, some great questions from the audience, but I always like to leave the door open if there's anything else that comes to mind for you to share that we haven't touched on.
Just really that, some people can be skeptical of why suddenly Skaregard appears on the scene. But I hope I've been able to give you a sort of, with the highlights here, the global significance of this, the potential global significance of this project, given today's market situation. When I first studied in the Bushveld many years ago, an old guy who'd been on the Bushveld for many years said, "Tony, it all starts and ends in the market. It's about the value of the rock, the value of the rock and what it costs to get that rock to market." So we have a very valuable potential rock here. It could become even more valuable over the next several months as we get this new data. So we have a very valuable rock, and we have the mechanisms for getting that rock to market.
Terrific, Tony. A really great tour through the inner thinking with you. I appreciate that. Tony Williams of Major Precious Metals, I really want to thank you for your time and joining us at the VID conference. And for everyone who tuned in, please feel free to fill out a questionnaire. We'd like to hear your thoughts on that part as well. Tony, I'll send my thanks as we close this one out.